Hello, I didn't think I was going to be doing another video on this topic. Not on my page anyway, there's so much content elsewhere that people, I don't know if you need my input on the details, but I just did want to recap and follow up on all of this business to do with the movie It Ends With Us and everything that's happening between Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively and Taylor Swift now and Ryan Reynolds and all of the other connected parties. If you've not come across me before, my name is Anne-Marie Cassidy and I have a hypnotherapy practice called Charmed Life Therapy. So my point in doing all of these videos that I do on here is to get you to understand your greater consciousness, your experience on this planet, if you like, what it means to be human, working with the power of your mind to rewire your mind, and why all of this fascinates me so much. What's going on here is that all of these people are doing this to themselves. You know what I mean? It's not even so much about blame when I show up here and talk about it. My greatest wish for all of this is that everybody comes out of it with some more self-awareness, and that does not seem to be happening right now. My feeling right now on the evidence that there is right now is that, just I've said it before, I think Justin Baldoni, I think he's essentially a really good person. I think he's trying hard. I think he's trying too hard to be a feminist, the modern view of it being a feminist, and that's partially why he lost control of his own movie. He was too busy trying not to oppress women, and I think he just gave in a bit too much, and I think part of the problem was Blake Lively saw that and just kept taking more and more and more and more. I think that's part of the issue. I also think she took offence to certain things like him asking his trainer to check with her trainer, or whatever the train of trainers was, you know, to check in and ask about her weight ahead of, you know, having to schedule a lift where he would have to lift her at some point in the thing. I think she really took offence to that, because she really does seem to have some sensitivities over a body, or a body being examined in any way in that sense, or judged or found wanting. I think we've seen evidence in past interviews where she really does seem to have some sensitivities about that, like when people have pointed out she's pregnant, etc. It's almost like, how dare you notice that my belly is getting bigger? There's a little bit of that to it, I think. So I think basically from what we're seeing right now, I think it looks like he's really been treading eggshells and tried his best to sort of give her what she wants. You know, and obviously he knows that the parties behind them have got a lot of power, and he's still like a rising person, an up and comer. He's trying to establish himself as a director. So I guess there's been some vulnerability there as well. But I think his main problem is his deep desire to be some form of feminist and empower women, and for women not to be downtrodden or oppressed. But the danger there is that you just let women say and do everything, you know, and your masculinity suffers and nobody knows where the boundaries are anymore. I think that is part of it. But what is kind of more and more transpiring now with what we know now, or what's available right now, is just what I want to talk about is all of the grievances that are going on, basically. I think she kind of early doors got some grievances in her mind about Justin Baldoni. Now maybe that is that she did catch some feelings for him and they weren't returned, because he does seem to be really dedicated to his wife and his family. He is a very sexy man. I mean, he's not the kind of man I would go for, but when you listen to that 2 a.m. voicemail, he kind of is sexy without even trying to be sexy. His voice just alone is a very sexy voice. So she's kind of full of hormones. Maybe there is a thing of she got a little flutter going on. I think her husband was away filming at the time. She might have felt vulnerable, all of these things, and he's this kind, caring man. And maybe her feelings weren't returned. We don't know. We don't know the truth of that. But she might have had a little bit of a crush. And then when little things like the weight question, not weight loss, he just asked how much she weighed. From a technical perspective, maybe one or two little things just got to her and changed her perspective. There's also the story out now that it was when Ryan came back from filming Deadpool, when there was the break for the screenwriters strike, that he saw things in either the daily clips, or maybe he picked up his wife's phone and didn't like that they were messaging each other at 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning and things like that. Didn't like the tone of it. He certainly wouldn't have liked that. You know, if he'd heard any voice notes, he definitely probably would have had his masculinity take a hit, I think, listening to that voice if it's on his wife's phone at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. So I think there's been a whole chain of things going on, and I think a big part of this is that Blake and Ryan do have very delicate egos. I don't think they've got great self-esteem. So when you have a lot of power but you have no self-esteem, you don't know how to handle power. You can't handle power, because when you have no self-esteem, everything has to go your way. If you're in like positions of responsibility or being all over social media or on movies, and it's important the way you look and all of that, but you have no self-esteem, you basically do, anytime something goes wrong, it kind of questions your whole belief about life and about yourself. So you can't afford for anything not to go your way when you lack self-esteem, because you can't handle it. You've got no resilience. You've got nothing built up that keeps you stable for times when things don't quite go your way. And I think that's a big part of it here too, that neither Blake nor Ryan have great self-esteem. I said in a previous video when that clip was released that she claims is about sexual harassment, an instance of sexual harassment, and on his perspective, it's just no, he was trying to direct her in this scene where he didn't want talking. She insisted on talking. He's trying to just get the scene in the can, is what it seems to be. He doesn't appear to be doing anything untoward. She's leaning into him as much as he's leaning into her. It very much seems like a give and take, just normal thing on set when you're portraying two people being in love and all that. But yeah, it's just interesting, really, that it's all been misconstrued in that way, and it's been used, and now it's even coming out that this has been, the setup of this in motion has all been a lot longer than we thought it was. There's now this Reddit article apparently from 6 months ago, which is before the premiere, before there was any, you know, inkling of things not being right, that kind of said that this was in play, this was in motion, that threats had been made that if Blake Lively didn't get her own way, then she would go to the New York Times and claim sexual harassment. And that is now playing out, and it's even showing that the New York Times had the information they needed before the lawsuit came out, so there'd been some collaboration ahead of time over what was going to be in the press. I mean, if you've been sexual, it's like everybody is pointing out. I mean, you're trying to keep an open mind here about what's actually happened, which you need to do when it comes down to SH and things like that. You kind of need to see it from both parties. You can't just blindly believe the woman or the man. But what is happening here is that nothing is kind of being proven as to sexual harassment, but it does seem to be all about power and control, and people not being able to take hits to their ego when they don't get their own way. And the studio seems to have caved to Blake Lively in this sense of there was this threat of going to the New York Times, and if I don't get my own cut of the movie, then I'm going to go to the New York Times and I'm going to claim sexual harassment. So they've said, fine, you have your own cut of the movie. So all along, and I think the thing of it from Justin's point of view is he's done his best to give her what she wanted. And he's given her what she wanted, given her what she wanted, given her what she wanted. And then he's still being hit with this sexual harassment thing. And I think at this point, he's like, I can't be, you know, it's one thing to take the movie from me. It's another thing to ruin my entire life and endanger my family and everything I know, and make everybody question their relationships with me, both professional and personal. When it comes to that, somebody is going to fight for their life, and they're not going to give up, and they're going to show all the evidence they've got on God's green earth, and they're going to make a website and put everything that they have, all the text messages, all the voice notes, all the behind the scenes clips, because they're fighting for their life basically, you know. And that seems to be the thing, that Blake and Ryan have no concept of what is acceptable. It's like they've been wronged, so they're going to do all of this to him. They're literally going to try and wipe him off the face of the planet, is what they're trying to do. Take away everything he has, everything he knows. but they've not taken into account, it would seem, that on his team, behind the scenes, on his production company, he has a billionaire with nothing to lose who intends to leave no money behind when he goes. He's going to make sure it gets used. So this guy, it would seem that this guy knows the truth of it all, has seen everything, you know, behind the scenes, knows of everything that's gone on, and he's basically put his foot down and said, this isn't fair, I'm going to finance your lawsuit for you. So at this point, Blake and Ryan have got a problem, because they're not the kind of people that are going to find it very easy to back down or apologise or settle or anything like that, because I don't think they have the self-esteem to back it up, to take a hit like that. So they have to plough on, they've no real other choice. And now there's the whole other thing of Taylor Swift getting involved, and we don't know what Taylor's involvement is. And my little heart is breaking for this one, because I'm as big a Swiftie as the next person. But that's what I want to talk about when you have grievances. I mean, we do know that Taylor, across many songs, has said, you know, there's nothing I do better than revenge and various things. And part of that will be off her own experiences when she was young and being disempowered, and the Kanye experience and all of that. So to some extent, experience seems to have taught Taylor that you have to get your own back a little. That, you know, there is an element of that, you can't really deny it. Or fighting really hard for what you think is yours, but maybe not always having the other person's perspective. You know, and that comes with having power very, very young. And she comes from a family that were very supportive, and early doors, she's not known a lot of hardship, really. I mean, she's known professionally things quite difficult from being young, I would say, but not from a childhood perspective. I mean, I think, you know, I think part of the thing with Taylor is that her parents, you know, validated everything she was doing and supported it, but she'll have had elements from school that were jealousy and stuff like that. So we don't know really what's making up Taylor's map of the world out, and we don't truly know yet what her scope is on this, but we do know some kind of slightly, you know, questionable things are coming out, like she was there for this meeting in Ryan and Blake's penthouse, and was that planned, or did she just walk in and happen to chime in on the discussion? We don't quite know that yet, and we don't know whether she's been manipulated by Blake, and you know that they've manipulated that, her being there or inviting her over when she expected that meeting to be done. We don't know how much manipulation has gone on. My feeling at this moment in time is that both Ryan and Blake do kind of have this strategy of pulling in powerful people around them in order to boost their own agenda. I do feel a little bit like Ryan's friendship with Hugh Jackman and Blake's friendship with Taylor Swift is about having powerful backup and boosting their own persona. I mean, you know, Ryan cannot do very much without banging on about how Hugh Jackman is the most wonderful person in the world, the most wonderful person he's ever met. He turns up wherever he is, basically, and bigs up Hugh Jackman. So there's an element of that. Even poor Hugh Jackman's behaviour is starting to be questioned on all of this, because so many interviews went on for the promo of both Deadpool and It Ends With Us, where it now appears that the driving force of those interviews and those promos has been to further humiliate Justin Baldoni by bringing in aspects of his life, his podcast, his hairstyles, his experiences taking ayahuasca journeys, that Ryan has been having these promo interviews and you know, equating it to him being on meth or something like that. And we've all kind of sat here over, or those of us that follow those things, over, you know, that time where they were in the promo phase for Deadpool and It Ends With Us, and thinking, we were sat watching these interviews and thinking, is this funny? What is this about? I don't even understand it. I watched Deadpool and Wolverine and I couldn't really understand what all the thing was over using and having an intimacy coordinator in it, and various times across the thing I thought, is this funny? Am I just not getting it? Am I getting too old to find this thing funny? But it just made no sense in the context of the movie. But now what it's seeming is that it was a targeted humiliation campaign against Justin Baldoni, because Ryan Reynolds' ego has been tweaked, really. That's what it's seeming like. Because if you genuinely think that your wife has been sexually harassed, or you as a woman feel like you're being sexually harassed, what are your first ports of call if you're an actress? It's not to go straight to a newspaper, it's to go to your rep or your agent, your union person, whoever handles things for you. You'd go to the police, you'd go to the studio. Your first thing would not be to have the New York Times 6 months ago pulling this article together, you know, in this kind of what's looking like a targeted, coordinated effort that's kind of been held in abeyance for just when they needed it. So 6 months ago, this thing kicked into creation. They knew they were going to produce a claim at some point for SH against Justin Baldoni, and they didn't detonate that bomb till a couple of days before Christmas, giving him minimal hours to respond to it. And who does that kind of thing at Christmas? You know, when you know, like, people are going to be off, hours are going to be less, you know, family, what the effects on the person's family, blah blah blah, if you're at all a human being anyway, of any kind. You know, you're thinking about all of that unless it's a targeted choice to do it at that time when it's going to cause the most inconvenience and there's not going to be that time to respond. And I think what they've not taken on board with all of this is just what happens when you push a good person too far. You know, it's like me as a Capricorn. I will take a lot of abuse from people in terms, and I'll take a lot of hurt, and I'll keep going, and I'll keep trying, and I'll keep helping. I'm a bit like him in that sense, Justin. But when you push it so far that you've really hurt me and you're trying to wipe out my life, that's it. I can just, you know, flip. And in my case, I just walk away from people. It's just like I can just draw a line under it and walk away. But I think because they've questioned his whole livelihood, you know, there'll have been conversations with his wife that were awkward. It's like, I have to fight. They've given him no choice but to fight for his life and his future and what he wants out of life. They've given him no choice but to do that. And unfortunately for them now, he has the financial backing to take it to the end. So on the other side of it, you've got the deeply, you know, Ryan and Posse and all of that, you know, just really don't have great self-esteem to back it up. And what was I going to say just then? Yeah, just the Taylor thing. It's that thing of, this should be the best time in her life now. She's come off the back of that Era's tour. She's with this man that seems to be going really, really well now. They're probably on the marriage track and the children track. It should be the high point of her life. But she's been dragged into this. Now, whether that's her own fault because of how much input she's had into it, there's something to say that she got, that if Blake wanted to use this song in the movie, that then the composer had to be booted off because he had previously not been very great to Taylor. We don't know yet the truth of that, but we do know that the composer from Deadpool got pulled in to do it at short notice. You know, they said, you know, quick as he can, basically. They wanted it done in a week. I think it got done in 3 or 4 weeks in the end. So we don't know quite yet the truth of all of that, but we do know that 6 months ago there was a Reddit post that said all of this was in play, including the threat to the to go to the New York Times about SH and all of that. And this is what happens. This is the main point of this video in talking about this. This is what happens when human beings forget that we're all the same and we're all connected and we all deserve the same, and that we are light and love, and we're supposed to be working as a collective to enhance life. What's going on here is what happens when some people think that their lives are worth more than other people's lives, and their needs are greater than other people's needs, and what they want is what has to happen. And you get all of that disconnection going on. And the thing is, nobody really wins when it comes to that. You know what I mean? Justin and Blake are not going to win out of this. You know, Ryan's not going to win out of it. You know, Taylor's going to take a hit out of it. Everybody that's been involved, when you go at, when grievances is what is driving you, and revenge and getting your own back, and proving a point, and somebody having to be brought to justice because you deserve to have XYZ because they said something and that hurt your feelings. And when your life is like that, then you get yourself in pickles like this, because your chickens always come home to roost. You know, you do reap what you sow. And there's a big chunk of that going on here, I think. And there's still so much to come out of it. But what I would want to come out of it is for everybody just to gain more self-awareness, to look at what's happened and their part in it, and say, what could I have done? What should I have done? Have I brought this on myself? How would I handle it if I had this time over again to do it? What would I do differently? But I just get the sense that particularly Justin and Blake, not Justin, Ryan and Blake are not ever going to do that. They're just fundamentally, at their core, they're not secure enough to examine themselves in that way, I don't think. I mean, the level of vitriol that Ryan in particular has levelled at Justin, I mean, we can all be vicious at a moment, in a provoked moment. But what he's done is something over the course of months and months and months of getting his friends involved now, and getting like Brandon, the co-star, and it ends with us, getting him to sit in on it, and Ryan's own mother. And did these people know, or were they just thinking, oh, this is just some skit of Ryan's and I just have to read these lines and I don't really understand what the hell it's all about, but Ryan's supposed to be funny, so let's just read it out, and maybe I'm not supposed to get it, but somebody out there will get it. Or did they know? Were they fed a story? Did they jump on it and say, oh yeah, you know, it's so bad for you, I'm going to do, yeah, of course I'll do whatever. And if that's the case, then Hugh Jackman's in bother, Brandon Sklenar's in bother, Ryan's mother's in bother. He's dragged absolutely everybody and anybody into it, which again indicates a real lack of self-awareness and a real lack of what your actions will do to somebody else and their career and their personal lives. You know, that's a real big issue in my mind. And that's the lawsuit in itself. The whole thing seems to be about, I don't care what happens to this person, what happens to their family, their wife, their children, their career, their future prospects. I'm going to do this to them because I want X, Y, and Z. I wanted that movie. I wanted to slur him with SH in order that I could get the rights to the sequel, which Justin currently holds. But there's like a morality clause on it, so if it turns out that he was a sexual harasser or something like that, he could lose the rights to that second, to the follow-up. So is there an element of that? It just is not looking good. The whole thing is very nasty at this point. And I keep watching it thinking, I don't know if I should even be having this in my mind, but I'm kind of fascinated by it because I want to know the truth of it in order to understand, are these people just really that unself-aware that revenge and having your grievances dealt with and getting your own way is more important than anything else? And what I also think is really interesting is it's really indicative of what's happening right now spiritually, because more and more we're having our illusions about celebrity, about what it means to be a celebrity. You know, one by one they're falling by the wayside, they're exposing the humanity and the flaws. And I feel like it's a massive universal wake-up call to say, everybody, what is it that you're prioritizing in life? What do you think life is worth? Do you think it's worth this, having everything at all costs, living this life that's a falsehood, you know, and underneath being deeply insecure and deeply hurt and full of grievances and full of judgment on everybody else? Do you really think that is something to be elevated and sought after? You know, the whole celebrity culture and all of that. Because what it should really be coming down to is for us all to be helping each other out to understand we're part of a collective. We're all in the same human pickle. So how are we going to help each other? Having grievances against anybody isn't serving anybody, because if that's what's happened from Taylor's perspective at this moment, that she's kind of sided with her friend in terms of rewriting, supporting her rewrites of bits in the script, which it turns out now that maybe she didn't rewrite at all. Maybe it was her husband, because she literally said that on a red carpet. Blake said the scene that she'd strong-armed, well, she didn't say the strong-arm bit, this bit, but she basically backtracked on the argument that had happened, whereby she said she'd rewrote this scene. Justin didn't give her enough praise or credit for it, didn't just say, yes, I'm going to blindly just use that scene. He just said, I appreciate your passion. She took offence to that, because appreciating my passion is not the same as just you know, saying, yes, we'll use that. That's going in the movie, validating me, you know. It's like, I keep losing my train of thought, and it's so annoying. But I think you can see where I'm going with it. It's that, you know, if I don't get my own way, that's it. I get to ruin your life. And Taylor has come along, you know, what was the scene there? Was she just blindly backing up her friend, which we should never do? We should never just blindly back up people when we don't know the whole scenario. You know, Blake seems to have built up this little army around her, because she claims that in the past she's been overlooked or whatever. But has she been overlooked, or have people just had a directorial vision and they don't want her interpretation of it, which is fair enough. You don't have to have somebody else's interpretation of something when it's your vision, your project, your passion. You know, but she feels like her needs have not been met in the past because she hasn't got her own way, basically. So now she has powerful people like Ryan and Taylor behind her who will help her get her own way. Now, Taylor might have been just being a good friend at that point and just saying, oh, yeah, I just think it's so good what she's done. We don't know exactly what's been said. But what it's looked like to Justin is being, going along to a meeting, kind of maybe not knowing Ryan would be there, certainly not knowing Taylor would be there. So he's had to sit with these powerful people telling him what should be. And him as the up-and-coming person, you know, that's kind of like a veiled threat. There's no two ways about it. But what Taylor's culpability is in that yet we don't know, and we don't quite know if it's true that Taylor said, if you want to use my song in the movie, then you have to bounce the current composer off the project. We just don't know, because the current composer, you know, there was some kind of slight there. But whatever it is, it's such a shame if Taylor's really culpable in this. And, you know, it doesn't make me happy, because I like Taylor, I like her music, I like the amount of good that she's done in the world. But it does highlight that none of us are perfect, you know, and we do make mistakes. And this is what happens when you make it about grievances and getting your own back. And, you know, people that have done bad to you, that there should be some retribution that happens, you know. It's like, you know, they say, if you go after revenge, better dig two graves, isn't it, basically? You only get away with it for so long. It will come back to haunt you. And that's kind of my message today. I'm sorry where I've lost my train of thought. I know there was like one or two moments where I lost my train of thought and where I was going with it. But I think you get the point that I've been trying to put across, hopefully. And I didn't really intend to talk about it again. But it's just getting bigger and bigger, is this thing. And that is what happens when you blindly side with people without knowing the other side of the story. And like I say, I think people like Hugh Jackman have to look at the behaviour, Taylor Swift has to look at her behaviour, all of the other people, the aides, everybody around it has to look at their own behaviour. Justin Baldoni, even if he's totally innocent of sexual harassment, should look at his own behaviour and look at, am I so busy being a feminist that I'm actually losing what's great to be a man, what's great about masculinity? Did my just early doors, letting her have everything her own way, open the whole thing up to the opportunity for her ego? And bear in mind, none of us should be led by our egos. Our egos aren't healthy things to be led by. did my actions in trying to just be so serving to women and meeting women's needs, did that open the door for her ego to come crashing through and stamp all over the project? And what can I learn from it? That's my thing about all of this, that I really want people to learn from what's happening here, not just the people involved, all of us. What can all of us take from it? Because it is kind of fascinating. I think that's why it's grabbing us all so much. So I'm sure there'll be another video where I remember half of the points that I've just forgotten. But thank you for sticking with me and watching, and please do like and consider subscribing and drop a comment. I'd love to know your feelings on it all, particularly when it comes down to, you know, the subtext, the underlying things, the things we can learn from it. You know, I'd really love to hear from you about that. And thank you for watching. I'll see you later.